Okay, Andrew Morgan, please say your name and the date.
Andrew Morgan, it is Friday, May 22nd.
Thank you. So, to start out, give me a little bit of an idea about how you got interested in making socially conscious films.
Yeah, I don't think I ever set out to, in a way. I made my last film before this was a documentary that was about loss and grief. I had lost my dad, and it became just this incredibly personal film. And I think in the process of making that, it sort of opened my heart up to just how much stories could move people, just how much how much they could accomplish in the world. And that really, finishing up that project, led right into this one. And this is the first one that I feel like I've ever been able to sort of put together the different things I care about into a film, It's like issues that I've grown up being concerned about, and then also using this medium that I love, which is filmmaking. This feels like the start of like finding a voice, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, but why do you choose film as an expression of the things that you care about or the causes that you...
It was the only thing I ever knew how to do. Like when I grew up in Atlanta, and I was one of those kids that was, I was making and showing little movies in my neighborhood at like age 10, and I graduated high school and moved out to LA when I was 18. I studied cinematography. The medium of it just has always made sense to me. It's always moved me. I mean, I think like movies are one of the only times that I get to open myself up to the possibility of a new idea. And they're one of the only times that I'm like quiet enough and engaged enough to really be moved. And that's why I can look back over my life and I can think about the films that changed my perspective. I mean, socially, movies like Hotel Rwanda, I remember being a kid seeing that movie, and just like, it was like it tore open a wall, and my view of the world just got that much bigger. Like there was a whole other thing out there that I'd never seen before. And I was just in Atlanta, like in a theater, So I love that. And I also love how many people see movies. I think I loved reading about when John Lennon said he quit art school to play rock and roll because a lot of people listen to rock. I want to make movies that a lot of people see. And that's not ego, that's just, I want to really see us move the needle on some of these issues, I don't want to make a film that 20 people see in a little room. I want to make something that's accessible for a lot of people.
So what is your thought then on the difference in terms of visibility and influence between fiction features and documentaries, or do you not see any difference?
I see a difference. I'd like to say I don't, but I do. I think there's still a difference. I think they're getting closer together. I think documentaries are becoming, the good ones, more cinematic, and they feel like there's actual cinema involved in them. But I think there's a long way to go on that. I still think documentaries, probably the most challenging thing about documentaries is that they are harder for people to see. They still have a smaller slice of the market. And frankly speaking, I'd like to do both. I'd like to not just be limited in one.
So you're dealing in this film with a new awareness about yet another part of what is a huge breakdown in our civilization. And in doing so, you chose to do a documentary that features a lot of different truths about the fashion industry and its impact on the world, our economics, our culture, our humanity, our demise. How would you put that all into a film that has the popular reach of another fashion film, for example, that has absolutely no social consciousness, and that would be The Devil Wears Prada? How do you bridge that aesthetically And in terms of impact and the kind of reach that you are able to get as a person with a voice who's committed to speaking out on something through film?
It's a great question. I think that's the challenge. I think that's the tug of war that I played in the edit room on this one, was how hard do we make this to watch versus how accessible do we make it. And I hope that we arrive somewhere in the middle. I think it's a challenging film. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But one of the things I think helped was to include imagery and ideas from the fashion world, not just the human rights world or the environmental side. And frankly, that's kind of what makes this film, that's what makes this topic so riveting to me, is it is something that we can all relate to and we can all connect to. So I think for me it was important to include imagery and include ideas in the film that were familiar to us, that felt like, but put them in a new context to where you were maybe looking at them in a different way.
Can you be specific with a couple of examples?
Yeah, well, I think some of it, just visually speaking, looking at, we spent time on some of the biggest fashion runways in the world, and we spent time on the runways and backstage, and the photographers and the models. We spent time in design showrooms. We spent time, so some of the imagery in the film is quite beautiful in the sense that it's not all like condemning fashion across the board. I think if anything, what I'm trying to communicate visually is there's an art form that I'm afraid is dying, or there's something that I think is being bought off. So we're critical on the business side, but yeah, the fashion runway stuff. I also think on a lesser positive example, even including retail imagery and advertising imagery, I think that's just something we're all very, very familiar with. And it's not something that we naturally think through very deeply. I don't even. It just kind of washes over us. So to put imagery that we're very familiar with right next to a scene that maybe we're unfamiliar with, I hope it has a jarring effect, but at the same time, I hope it has a relatable effect. I didn't just want to make this movie like a third world movie, where you have like the chanting music and the poor people, because I think you kind of check out of that. But if we could sort of bounce back and forth between developing world, Western world, then I felt like I could keep you engaged,
You don't have poor people in this film. You have people who are being exploited badly. And you have people in this film who are standing up for their rights. They are not poor people. You show them, you are not demeaning them by identifying them as those poor otherworld people.
Yeah.
You're not doing that.
Yeah, and that was really intentional from the beginning. It was, how can we communicate the story and the struggle of some of these women in a lot of cases in a way that's not exactly what you're saying. It's not like these poor, pitiful women that need to be saved, and like, here comes the Western here. It was like these brave, bold women who are at great risk to their own families and safety and livelihoods, standing up for their own struggle. And how can we as a world get behind them? It's been the other way around for a long time. So you're right, yeah. And that kind of caught me off guard. The amount of really strong voices in this film caught me off guard. Strong female voice. That wasn't like intentional. I wasn't like, oh, I want to really... That just happened. And I look at it now and I think, man, that's like... Maybe what I'm most proud of is that these people are articulating their story and their struggle in a way that isn't just like, poor me, help me. It's, here's my struggle, and here's I want you to understand it, but I'm not asking you to that's a...
No, they just want to work,
shift.
and they want to be paid fairly for it. They don't want handouts. They don't want anything. They just want to be respected as workers, as human beings.
Very, very, very basic stuff. You're
Very
right.
basic stuff. And they're willing to stand up for that. And that is, in my mind at any rate, a very strong and compelling quality.
Well, and honestly, a new quality in a way. I think in a lot of these countries, that sweeping notion that I'm a human being and I have certain rights, that's a relatively new idea. And with technology and some tools, that idea is starting to spread. I think there's a lot of attention with any topic like this of we're going to fix it from like the west down, or from the top, most powerful down. And I think there's going to be a continued unsettling effect from some of these workers up. Because I think when they start to process what's taking place, when they start to understand more of like, here's what's happening at the other end of the supply chain, here's what's taking place, like, that's startling stuff, and that's some of what we show in Cambodia.
Yeah, I love the woman who's bringing one of her workers to see who's buying the stuff that they're making, and all of the women. It was in Africa, I believe. No, where was it? Bangladesh. That one was in Bangladesh. I'm sorry. Yeah. And you know, the women are applauding each other. They're not greedy and saying, let it be me, let it be me. They love the idea, and they love that somebody's going to be able to go and see what the tail end is there.
Yeah.
And they are so much more supportive of each other than we in the West are supportive of each other when it comes to job opportunities or work. It's just, it's remarkable. It's a real lesson there.
No, that was a really moving moment. It's touching to hear you say that. Because I thought the exact same thing. I thought in our world we'd be jockeying for who's gonna, but the smiles and the, like, there's some, they understand I mean, so many things that we don't understand. And I think that was kind of the process of making the film for me, was like, it's great to make a film like this because you just get to observe, you get to learn, you get to ask the questions, you get to not be the expert, you get to spend a couple of years just like really trying to understand, and that was one of the striking things to me.
There's another documentary, I can't think of the name of it right now, but about a group of, I think they're two women who were appealed to by, and this is, I think it's in South Africa, it might be in Zimbabwe. Local women, the village people of the village had never tasted ice cream. And the local women wanted to open an ice cream shop. And they got together and they formed a collective. And they all worked it out so that everybody got their share, and everybody got to do something that they liked, and something that they had to do something that they didn't like. And everybody was kind of satisfied working together in this very sisterly way. And it was sponsored by two women. I'll try and find it for you. It's fabulous.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, it's a fabulous film, actually, about strong women taking initiative. And there's another one called Rafia Solar Mama. Yeah, about a school in India that imports women, strong-willed women from different countries where their lives are miserable, and teaches them how to make solar panels, and it just is a whole boost to the economy in ways that are just amazing. But getting back to fashion, this is a film that questions our values very deeply. And so yeah, the values that this is a big question about values, and it questions our culture. It challenges our culture, and you address a lot of issues that filmmakers who've dealt with oil and food and other, commodities have also challenged. But this one, as you say, is one that seems kind of innocent and naive, and is clearly not. So one of the elements that you introduced that I found really surprising is that one of the biggest perpetrators of all of this is a major company that is headquartered in one of our most enlightened social democracies, and that is Norway, and it's H&M. And the woman who's answering for H&M is so vapid in her answer. It's appalling, and I was shocked by it. How did you press there Did you press there at any rate? Have you had any response from Norway yet on this documentary?
Yeah, I asked their team for an interview,
Uh-huh.
and I actually, to be honest with you, went to pretty great lengths to get it. I was willing to do a lot to make that as comfortable as I could, and it looked like it was going to work. We met with them, it was a whole thing, and then they decided we want to have absolutely no part of this. And, you know, that was their call, assessing the risk. They are avidly in contact with us right now the film's coming out. Eager to, I think in some ways, assess what it is. I think they want to see it, and there's, yeah, my invitation to them is still wide open. I hope we can be a part of the conversation. You know, I think I'm critical of them in the film. I'm critical of them because I think it's a business model that's only been made possible by you and I not caring enough to ask a question, by you and I being kept sort of asleep. You and I being kept...
We're distracted.
Yeah, distracted is the right word. So I think the onus is on them in a sense. You know, I think the film... I think it's their turn to respond in a way. You know, I really, because I don't think they're bad people. I think they're very enlightened, as you say. I think their system is at odds though with where we need to go as a world, and I think that's unquestionable to me at this point. Do you think? I mean. And by the way, your last comment about the values, that's a beautiful way that you watch the film. It's a very You're coming at this from a very heart-driven perspective, which is a lot of the conversations I'm having are policy and head, and they're great. But I appreciate that you sense that.
Thank you. I wonder whether they are distressed, H&M, distressed to the extent that they're threatening you in any way, like Joe Berlinger, for example, was threatened and crude. And if you think that you're going to need to defend against them, or if you think that in other words, when you're making the film, were you prepared, or were you thinking about possible consequences of your commentary?
Yeah, I think I was aware, well, on two levels. One, like on a personal level, I was aware that we were drawing a big line in the sand by not just ushering them in on the side of the good guys. They've wanted a lot of us to see them that way for a long time. They've invested a lot of money in that. I knew that we were crossing a line, and I knew that was going to make it harder for the film. I really did. They would have been a really helpful partner, you know. So it's like that was a hard line of conscience for me to be at a place of saying, you know what, I can't do that. And then yeah, there was some legal thought. I mean, there was some folks on our team that, you know, legally helped us make sure we were in line. And look, you know, you saw the film. It's there's a lot that I didn't use. Frankly, I didn't want the film to become like a blame and shame game against one company. I really didn't. I wanted to like stay away from that. So
it's a blame and shame game against the consumer, really, and not in not taking cognizance, not recognizing.
Yeah. Or maybe just all of us. Yeah, like we've all kind of kick the can or like pass the potato of responsibility, which has left the world's most vulnerable in a really dangerous place, in a more than dangerous place at many times. So yeah, I think you're right about that. I think it's like there's a humility to that too, because I think I'm not coming at this because I have been a consumer who has grown up buying and not thinking and not. This is kind of I've had this experience that's just opened my eyes and opened my heart and made my life more meaningful, and I want other people to have that experience. I really do, and I'm still hopeful that business can be a part of that. I think it's going to take some pushing. I don't think anyone's going to come to the table with a business that's a model that's generating 15% growth annually and just willingly say, let's develop a new plan. But I think there's a consciousness shift here. There's a values shift here. There's a question that, yeah, some of these questions go really deep to me. Like, as I've started to ask some of these questions that the film brought up, it's, yeah, they're quite, pardon the pun, but it's one of those like threads that you pull and it just keeps going. Like, it's had me questioning all kinds of things from my family and my life and my work and the way I purchase and in a way that I never did growing up. So,
you know, there's another documentary about a guy who decided that he and his family would do without electricity.
Really? I was
Yes, for a period of time and see how they fared, just because he wanted to understand what other people went through. And it practically broke up their marriage, and I mean, there are lots of very strange things happen. But I mean, this is not an uncommon thought, an uncommon
Well, and I think
concern.
I think where it leaves me is like when I had the experience over the last 2 years of spending time in all these countries, I think what you come back with is a profound awareness of the amount of influence that you have as a human being. And for me, for some reason, I was born into a situation of huge opportunity in global comparison and huge influence. And it just sort of raises the bar on like, how am I choosing to use that influence? You know, what am I don't know. I'm still wrestling with that. I'm still wrestling with that in terms of what my next film's going